Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be talking about the Memphis Grizzlies and every single possible big trade that involves Ja Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr. The reason I am creating this video today is recently there was a rumor that Jaren Jackson Jr. and Ja Morant could both be moved at this trade deadline. The reason for this is the Memphis Grizzlies don't think that these players can be the core of a championship team, and they think they want to move into a more Cedric Howard era of basketball and get a top pick in this next draft and stuff like that. So with this rumor, this kind of got my mind spinning a little bit, and I've kind of put together quite a few trades that are realistic to somewhat realistic. Some of them are probably there's a lot of trades here, so there's some that are probably not going to happen that just don't make a lot of sense, but they're possible. They're a possibility that should be in the back of your mind that if this does happen, it shouldn't be like, whoa, never even thought of this idea. And at the end, I have one big, huge trade that could shake up the whole entire NBA. To start off, I want to start with a trade with the Toronto Raptors. This trade is Ja Morant for Emmanuel Quickley, Ochai Agbaji, and the 2026 first rounder. You can do any first rounder, but I have the 2026 in here. But whatever. One first rounder is kind of what I'm thinking. There could even be two first rounders, a first rounder to kind of make it so it's a first rounder to take Emmanuel Quickley's contract. But this trade makes sense because the Toronto Raptors are kind of have this void in the point guard spot, and a Brandon Ingram, Ja Morant, and Scotty Barnes little trio sounds not too bad, and their bench would still be pretty solid. And also for the Raptors, they're getting off Emmanuel Quickley's contract, which is just awful. Ja Morant's is also not the greatest, but it is very much better than Emmanuel Quickley's $32 million for the next 4 years. Ochai Agbaji is in here just to make the money work. He has a $6 million contract. It's a one year contract, so they can let him go if they want to after this season. And then the first round picks are, of course, to give more value to this trade because Emmanuel Quickley and Ochai Agbaji by themselves, so not a lot of value. A team I want to talk about real quick is the Cleveland Cavaliers. I do think, they could do some shakeups in their roster because they just haven't really worked out with this big four of Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, Jared Allen, and Evan Mobley. I think they need some shakeups, and I think Ja Morant could be that player. But because the Cavs are a second apron team, it is very hard to make a trade happen. I couldn't figure out a trade that, was realistic and still worked. I'm sure, a GM that, does this for a living and isn't me, a lot smarter with contracts and trades, would be able to make this work out. You could probably do Ja Morant for Darius Garland, and I don't know. I feel like, in my opinion, I'm not sure how, what Ja Morant's value is to other teams, but I think you could do Darius Garland and then some picks. Then for Jaren Jackson Jr. to the Cavs, you could do Jaren Jackson Jr. for Jarrett Allen, and then you don't quite have enough money with just Jarrett Allen, so you would have to do like Max Strus or Lonzo Ball or just someone kind of like that, or you could even do DeAndre Hunter, and then like picks in there. I'm not sure exactly what the trade looks like to actually make it work, but something like that. The next trade is with the Boston Celtics. This trade is for Jaren Jackson Jr., and the Celtics are giving up Anthony Simons, Sam Hauser, and two first round picks is what I put, but maybe it's less. I'm not sure exactly what the value is, but I put two first round picks in my opinion. For the Celtics, this gives them Jaren Jackson Jr., who is a center that, they need a center. And, maybe Jaren Jackson Jr. is too big of a name that they need. Maybe they just need like a Zubac, someone to that level of center. But, why not go all out? You have Anthony Simons' contracts that isn't great anyways, so you can use that and just attach picks to it. And I think you can get Jaren Jackson Jr. And for the Grizzlies, if you're trading Jaren Jackson Jr., you're trying to rebuild, you're trying to sell the team. So, you know, why not get two first round picks out of them while you can? So You're bringing in Anthony Simons, which is a little bit of a younger player, so maybe he can turn into something for you guys. But really, in my opinion, I'm just not really planning on keeping on the team. I'm just taking him in this contract. I'm just taking in the contract to make this trade work, basically. Our next trade is with the Miami Heat, where the Miami Heat receive Ja Morant and Jock Landale. In this trade, the Heat are giving up Terry Rozier, Davion Mitchell, Simone Fontecchio, and then 2 first-round picks. It could potentially be 1 first-round pick, I think, but I put 2. But we'll see what Ja Morant's exact value is. His past couple games has helped his value, so maybe it's a little higher now. For the Heat, you're receiving Ja Morant. I mean, the star in this trade. Point guard that you pretty desperately need, I would say, to put next to Tyler Hero, Norman Powell, Andrew Wiggins, and Bam Adebayo. I really like this lineup then. I mean, I'm not sure the bench is, the greatest. I mean, you have Jaime Jaquez Jr. coming off the bench, which is really good, and Khalil Ware, which are some, 2 really good players to come off the bench. But that starting lineup is so good, not sure if your bench matters too much. And then, of course, in this trade, you're also giving up Terry Rozier. You're getting off that horrendous contract, which only has a year left. And we'll see what the NBA does with this contract if they just void this contract. So maybe this trade isn't possible to even be done. I'm not sure what the whole, legal things happening with him and with Terry Rozier's betting situation. So we'll see if this trade is even possible to do. But I actually really like this trade for the Miami Heat and for the Memphis Grizzlies, because you're receiving Simone Fontecchio, which is a really good young player. Davion Mitchell is pretty. He's younger, and he's pretty solid player. And then 2 first-round picks. You love to see that. So this trade is just I think a really good trade all around. The next trade I have is with the Milwaukee Bucks. In this trade, the Bucks receive Ja Morant, and they are giving up Kyle Kuzma, Bobby Portis, and a first-round pick. For the Bucks, this is your effort to try to keep Giannis, bringing in Ja Morant, a star level player, to keep you're just trying to keep Giannis at this point. You're doing anything you can to convince Giannis to stay. You're also getting that point guard because I'm not sure. Ryan Rollins has been really good this season, but I'm not sure you want Ryan Rollins as starting point guard when you're trying to contend for a championship. So you're getting Ja Morant to be that point guard for your team. You're also giving up Kyle Kuzma, whose contract isn't that great for what he's doing for the Bucks. And then Bobby Portis, he's a Bucks favorite, and he's a really one of those defenders and just one of those dominant players that are gonna always be a really good leader for the team. But I think you're willing to give him up if you're getting Ja Morant in return, and then a first-round pick, because the Grizzlies just need a little bit more value in this trade. And for the Grizzlies, you're getting a first-round pick, and then Kyle Kuzma and Bobby Portis, who hopefully you can maybe put together in a future trade to maybe get another first-round pick potentially. And also just guys like Bobby Portis will be really good for you to kind of teach your young guys how to just teach your young guys really how to play basketball, how to at the NBA level. This next trade is with the Charlotte Hornets, and this one is really simple. The Hornets are receiving Ja Morant, and the Grizzlies are receiving LaMelo Ball. It's a 1-for-1 swap, LaMelo for Ja Morant. Maybe there's some protected picks or second-round picks in that trade, I don't know. But for me, just do a 1-of-1 swap. It makes it so much easier. And I think this, is a win-win here. In this scenario, you're thinking the Grizzlies aren't trading Jaren Jackson Jr. and they're, just trading LaMelo to hopefully, get someone that was in just a bad organization, get him into a better one. And then the Hornets are thinking the same thing, get rid of LaMelo Ball. He just hasn't really, been that guy, and just get him a different scenario. And then bring in Ja Morant that just needs to be in a different scenario. So it's just, I think, a win-win. Just give these guys a second chance on a different team. The next trade I have is with the Minnesota Timberwolves, where the Minnesota Timberwolves receive Ja Morant, and they're giving up Naz Reid, Dante DiVincenzo, and Mike Conley. The Timberwolves, they receive Ja Morant, which is, they've been really, missing out on the point guard position this year due to Mike Conley's kind of age is kind of starting to catch up to him. So they're receiving Ja Morant that gets them that point guard position, and then more star power. Ja Morant, Anthony Edwards, Julius Randle, and then Rudy Gobert. I know he's not a fan favorite from a lot, but um, he's still a really good defender, no matter what anyone says. I think that makes a really good, really good core there. Your bench isn't the greatest, especially after this trade where you're giving up. I mean, Nas Reed and Dante DiVincenzo and Mike Conley, which is a lot of rotational depth players, kind of. So it does tank your depth a little bit, but you're adding Ja Morant, so I think you'll be okay. And then for the Grizzlies, you're getting rid of Ja Morant, which is it just kind of needs to happen. And then you're receiving Nas Reed, Dante DiVincenzo, and Mike Conley that you can go two ways with this trade. You can go just retooling and kind of try to win around Jaren Jackson Jr. Or you can go ahead and say we're gonna flip these guys later on for picks. Is what we're gonna do. We're gonna let them build their value maybe a little bit in Memphis, and then we're gonna flip them for picks. And you're also reuniting with Mike Conley, and maybe you let him just retire a Memphis Grizzly, and they know it is a happy ever ending type story. But we'll see. I don't know when he plans on retiring, but well, maybe that's how that works out. But I think this is a pretty win-win trade here for everyone. Now we have a trade that might be a little bit more unrealistic. This trade is with the Phoenix Suns. In this trade, the Suns receive Ja Morant while they're giving up Jalen Green, Nick Richards, and a first-round pick. In this trade, the Suns are receiving Ja Morant, so they're putting Ja Morant next to Dillon Brooks, his ex-teammate, and Devin Booker, who is Devin Booker, the super great player. So I think Ja Morant and Devin Booker can be a really good duo, and then Dillon Brooks has been balling out for Phoenix, so he can be right there with them. And they're also giving up Jalen Green, who is at a pretty high value right now because he's been playing really well with the Suns, but he's a lot like Devin Booker, and I just don't think it fits super well to have Jalen Green and Devin Booker on the court right next to each other. And then Nick Richard kind of just makes the contract work. He's also a solid, valuable player. Where I think because you have those players that are pretty valuable, you just have to give up one first round pick. I don't think you need to give up two for Ja Morant in this trade. And for the Grizzlies, this is kind of going into a rebuild. You're also planning on trading Jaren Jackson Jr. You're bringing in a pick. You're getting Jalen Green, who you can hope that can play the rest of the season for you, and then maybe next season or the season after that, you can get traded for two first round picks if he really hoops for you in Memphis. And also Nick Richards is a solid player that can you're probably just gonna let him go after this season, but maybe he turns out to be a really good player out in Memphis. The Golden State Warriors are up for the next trade, where they receive Jaren Jackson Jr. and give up Jonathan Kuminga, Moses Moody, Trace Jackson Davis, and a 2026 first-round pick. For this trade, the Warriors receive Jaren Jackson Jr., who can be, a really good defensive big man for them, a center that they just, really have lacked in the past. And this can help Steph Curry, especially since Jimmy Butler just recently went down with an ACL tear for the rest of the season. And also this could, leave you with potential to trade Jimmy Butler and go get a Michael Porter Jr. or Lauri Markkanen and have a new look team with Steph Curry, Jaren Jackson Jr., and then Michael Porter Jr. or Lauri Markkanen or someone like that. And also in this trade, you're getting rid of Jonathan Kuminga, who's demanded a trade, and you also don't want on the roster. So you're able to get rid of him in this trade. And then Moses Moody has been a solid player, but he's making more money than you would like at $11.5 million. And then Trace Jackson Davis is kind of whatever you're willing to give up. He doesn't really get minutes anyways, so he's willing, or you're willing to give up him in this trade. And the reason he's in the trade is to make the money work. And then a first round pick. I think you're willing to give up a first round pick to go get Jaren Jackson Jr., especially if you're planning on getting another player like a Michael Porter Jr. or Lauri Markkanen. For the Grizzlies, this is a trade that you're working to sell the team and go into this new generation and rebuild the team by you're getting Jonathan Kuminga, who hopefully can go ball out and be a young star for you. If you're finally giving him the minutes that he needs to really show who he can be, so hopefully he can play really well for you. And then Moses Moody's another young player, and Tracy Jackson Davis that maybe they just need the minutes and need the opportunity to be able to play to their full potential, and they can really become a great player. All three of these players have had great flashes in their careers, in their short careers. So I think they really have some potential to really play well if they have the opportunity to really show what they can do. And you're also receiving a first round pick. You can never say no to first round picks. I do want to say that the Grizzlies and Warriors have had beef in the past with like Dylan Brooks and other players. So I do want to say that this might not work out just because the Grizzlies don't want these Warriors players that have had beef with the team in the past, and also the Warriors don't want Jaren Jackson Jr., who's had beef with the Warriors in the past. But I would think for a big trade like this, they would put that to the side and give each other another chance. Okay, the next trade is with the Dallas Mavericks, where the Mavericks receive Ja Morant and Brandon Clark, and then the Grizzlies receive Anthony Davis. This is basically a one-of-one swap for Ja Morant for Anthony Davis. Brandon Clark is in there because I think Ja Morant's a little less valuable than Anthony Davis. They're both injury prone, and Anthony Davis, when he's on the court, is a much better player than Ja Morant. So I just think Brandon Clark kind of evens it out and also makes the contracts work. So maybe there's picks involved. I'm not sure exactly what the trade would exactly look like if GMs were doing it, but this is kind of just what the basis of what I had. This kind of makes both teams go into a different direction, but still a contending direction. For the Mavericks, you're adding Ja Morant, so you can have a point guard still until Kyrie returns, which isn't too much longer. But then when Kyrie returns, you can play both guards. I mean, you can play Kyrie at the 2. He's played the 2 before, and then Ja Morant can play the 2 also, if need be. And then for the Grizzlies, you're adding Anthony Davis. So, um, I don't love the fit, to be honest. So this trade isn't super realistic, but I thought it's a fun idea. You're getting a Ja Morant, and then you bring in Anthony Davis. So Anthony Davis and Jaren Jackson Jr. next to each other, might be it's gonna be really good defensively. So I don't know. I don't know how much I love the trade, but it would work out. It would definitely work out. You could also do the same trade where you do Anthony Davis for Jaren Jackson Jr. and Brandon Clark, but I think I like the Ja Morant idea a little better. The next trade I have here is pretty interesting. I have the Utah Jazz getting Ja Morant and Scottie Pippen Jr., while they give up Yusuf Nurkic, Kyle Anderson, Georges Niang, and 2 first-round picks. You are probably wondering, you're like, Keontae George is in Utah, you don't need another point guard. But if you guys didn't know, Keontae George is a natural 2 guard. He was never a 1 guard until coming into the league. So I think put Keontae George back at the shooting guard position, and I think he will become even better of a player than he already is, especially scoring the ball. And then let Ja Morant play that point guard for the Jazz, and then you have a nice trio of Ja Morant, Keontae George, and Lauri Markkanen, and then Ace Bailey can maybe potentially become something. And I really like what you have going on there, and I think you can be a pretty solid playoff team. And you're also not giving up a lot. You're giving up Yusuf Nurkic, who has been pretty solid for the Jazz this season, but I don't think you're super upset with it. And then Kyle Anderson and Georges Niang really haven't done a whole lot this season. And then 2 first-round picks, which is just kind of that value. Maybe it is 1 first-round pick you only have to give up, but I just put 2 because I think that's a little bit more realistic to what the value is. And then for the Grizzlies, you're getting 2 first-round picks is what you're getting in this trade. Maybe you're able to move those players for more picks or something like that. I think you can probably move Yusuf Nurkic for another first round pick. With the other two, probably not. You probably just kind of have to wait for them to leave in free agency. But you're still getting 2 first round picks. That's that's really nice in this trade for Ja. The next trade I have is with the Sacramento Kings, where they receive Ja Morant, and then they give up DeMar DeRozan, Dennis Schroeder, and 2 first round picks. I think it could probably be 1 first round pick, but I put 2 because I just don't think DeMar DeRozan's value is very high right now. In this trade, the Kings receive Ja Morant. They're just trying to be a playoff team or a play-in team at least. I want to say that I don't think this is a good trade. I don't think the Kings should do this. I think they should just trade Sabonis, DeMar DeRozan, Zach LaVine, all their guys, Russell Westbrook. I think they should trade them all and just start rebuilding. Like get picks. Stop trying to sign players and trade for players and stuff like that. Just sell the whole team and start rebuilding. That's what I really think they should start doing. So I don't think this is I don't think this is what they should do, but I think this is a possibility of what could happen. And then for the Grizzlies, you're receiving DeMar DeRozan, which is an old player, but maybe you can get a pick out of him if you trade him, but it's kind of whatever. And then Dennis Schroeder, he will just play for you. I think these are just guys that kind of you bring in to then get those 2 first round picks. And maybe these contracts are so bad that you can get a 3rd first round pick. I just don't know if that's really possible, but I think it's more realistic just get 2 first round picks. The next trade I have for you is with the New Orleans Pelicans, where they receive Ja Morant for Jordan Poole, Kevon Looney, and then 2 first-round picks. In this trade, they're pairing up Ja Morant, Zion Williamson, and then you have Derek Queen still, and Jeremiah Fears, and then Trey Murphy, Herb Jones, and DeJounte Murray. I think you can be a fun team doing this trade. I'm not sure. I mean, you're not going to contend for a championship, definitely. Not sure if you're going to make much of a run in the playoffs. But I think you can be like an 8 seed, like a play-in fun type of team where you're going to sell tickets. And I think that's kind of your goal right now, because if you're the Pelicans, you're kind of starting to worry about maybe your team isn't going to be in New Orleans for much longer because you're just not able to sell tickets. And I don't think that's New Orleans' fault, like the city of New Orleans. I think that's the front office problem because they just haven't been able to do anything. So you do this trade to kind of just sell more tickets, not to really contend, but maybe you can build a contending team around this. In this trade, you're also getting off of that ginormous Jordan Poole contract that is just horrendous. And then for the Grizzlies, you're getting 2 first-round picks. You could maybe even talk the Pelicans into giving you 3 because you're taking that Jordan Poole contract. But I'm not sure. I put 2, but you could maybe possibly get 3. But really, you're just happy about getting this picks. And then maybe you could even have Jordan Poole play really good for you, and then you're able to trade him for more picks in the future. And for this last trade, it is huge. It is with the Milwaukee Bucks, where the Bucks give up Giannis Antetokounmpo and Thanasis, and they're receiving Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Santi Aldama, Brandon Clark, and 4 first-round picks. In this trade for the Grizzlies, they're receiving Giannis. I mean, now they have a big 3 of Ja Morant, Jaren Jackson Jr., and Giannis Antetokounmpo. I think, Giannis is going to instantly take this organization into a championship win now, potential. I think they'd instantly be put into the conversation to be able to, win the championship this season. I think that's an insanely good big 3 there. And I think this is a really realistic option that could happen that just really hasn't been talked about, because there's been more talk about Ja Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr. being traded away than there has been for someone to be added. And there's also been a lot of talk from organizations around the league that they're convinced that Giannis will be traded this season. And then for the Bucks, they receive Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Santi Aldama, and Brandon Clark. who are all really just salary, like to make the money work. Um, but maybe you can get more out of those players, and once they play for you, you could build their value up a little bit and get some more picks out of them. And then you're also receiving 4 first round picks, one of them being via Orlando is what I have. Um, I just not sure if the Grizzlies want to give up 4 of their own first round picks, so I made sure to add one that was Orlando's in there. But 4 first round picks is huge, especially because you just never know with the current NBA. One of these, the most future first round picks, 2032. I mean, you just don't know what's going to happen in 6 years' time. Giannis might not be on the Grizzlies anymore. Ja Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr. might not be on the Grizzlies anymore. You just never know what's going to happen in the league. So in 2032, you could have a really valuable pick in your hands. But that's all I have for this video today. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, could you hit that like and subscribe button? That would mean the absolute world to me. But I'll see you guys next time. Peace.